All right, I just started recording our conversation. All right, thanks, John. Thanks, Kelly. We've got a small group. I'm recording us so that when we are, as we walk through this, I'll share the video link with anybody who was not able to join in. It's interested in participating in the discussions. Okay, so thank you for joining again. Our goal today was we're continuing our discussion. First in Wichita, we started the conversations, then we met, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a week ago. We connected up via this video conference, and based on that conversation that day, sounded like folks wanted to get to understand how to use the actual tools that we've been talking about in a little bit more practical manner. Let me just pause for a second. Hi, someone just joined.
Yes, Kyle McEwen.
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
Doing well.
Excellent. So you were the person who's having some issues with the phone?
Correct.
Okay, got it. All right. 1 second. Okay, great. So we just started, I was giving a quick recap. We started the conversation in Wichita, and then from there we had a meeting, I think 2 weeks ago. We walked through basically the remaining parts of the presentation that we weren't able to cover. And based on that discussion, now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of some of our tools that we have developed thanks to, I can't say enough about our sponsors, Community Foundation of the Ozarks and USDA Rural, who have been helping develop these materials. And so whatever we could be doing to share this content with other communities who may be in similar situations, I think that's a very appropriate thing to do. So my hope today is pretty straightforward. We went through and looked at all the collateral that we built out as part of our work in the Ozarks in Missouri, and tried to kind of organize it in a way that may be easier for you. We took a lot of stuff out that we thought just could be confusing or overwhelming. And there's a lot there still. So what I want to do with you is kind of walk you through what all there is. There is a lot there, but if you just understand broadly what information is available, then at your own convenience, you can go in and play with the content. And then, so my hope for this call is to give you the quick walkthrough, field any questions that you may have as we're walking through it. Let us know, let me know, if there's any feedback you have on the content, any questions. Our goal is to make this content as easily usable as possible. And then coming out of today's conversation, I'm hoping that, maybe you take the next 3-4 weeks just playing with the content, poking around here and there. And then maybe early January, we can connect back up and talk about what you thought about the content. So as we mentioned last time, we want you to use the content. We want you to share any information, insights that you have. There's just one catch. It's all free. You can use it, but there's really nothing free in life. So there is a catch, and the catch is your feedback. We really want to know in which ways is this content helpful, in which ways is this information not helpful, what are the most practical elements, what's not, so that we can, again, use that feedback to continually improve and enhance our content. Something else, just a heads up I want to give you, one of the things I'm starting to work on also is, to call it a book sounds too academic and grandiose. It's way beyond my capacity to tackle something like that. But we are looking to build a story that helps tell basically the process of how community leaders can take our learnings, take some of the case studies, and take that content and apply it to their respective communities. And we're sort of coming at it not from a academic research angle. We're coming at it more from sort of a fictitious good read, as good of a read you can make economic development. So the idea is that hopefully in the next 6 months, we will have a good draft of it ready. So some of the content you're seeing, some of the tools you're seeing will be stitched together in a story so that a community person who's interested in seeing their community improve, as they look and are confused about where to begin, they can sort of use this story platform to orient themselves to, okay, how do I think about the opportunities through the lens of sort of a fictitious community? And then alongside that novel, you've got all the tools that they can apply to their respective communities. So I just kind of wanted to give you a context of, what our plans are, how we're looking to take the content out. We just think that if we package the information that way, it may be more accessible, less intimidating, and a bit more sort of story-oriented. So let me pause there just for a moment, and just John, let me ask you: does any thoughts, feedback so far? Does this align with what you were hoping we would talk about today?
Yes, I think so. But I did take a quick glance at your link and some of the information that was available there, and yeah, it would be really helpful to have that more in a, I guess, a step-by-step procedure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh yeah, perfect. That's exactly, what I've found is we've tried this a few different ways. If we build the content in sort of a how-to recipe, I find that the content becomes very dry, and sometimes it's difficult for people to stay engaged and enthusiastic about wanting to learn. And so that's why we're taking this approach of really telling a more interpersonal, fictitious story that's all rooted in, almost an allegory is what we're talking about. So take the realities and then embed them in a much more accessible manner. So thank you for that feedback, John. That makes sense. Kelly, thoughts from you?
Your timeline for reviewing and discussing this all sounds very good. Going out to January to touch base again. I really love your idea of kind of novelizing the process. It makes me think of a kind of an office culture book that our office read together a few years ago about like the Seattle fish market and about like, it's like workplace culture and like qualities of workplace culture. But yeah, they make a little fictitious story out of it to illuminate those different aspects that you're trying to do. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. Kyle?
Rasheed, I did want to let you know I joined a few minutes ago, so on my cell phone. I'm still out of power. But
Great. Thanks, Brian. And Kyle, thoughts from you, sir?
Very impressed. Just, again, consuming and trying to connect where the products, the tools might fit best in our particular situation.
Great. Good. Okay. So now that Brian is on, I just wanted to tip my hat to Brian and his organization, Community Foundation of the Ozarks, one more time. All of this collateral that you're seeing is built as a result of their sponsorship. And so I can't thank them enough for our ability to create this content that hopefully can have impact beyond just Southern Missouri. Okay, so with
thanks,
that,
Rasheed.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said thanks. The one thing I would like to add, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk to that, but it's also intertwined, is community health. And I'm having some discussions here with Missouri Foundation for Health and others about how can we build a better model to address public health, which then gets into school success and opportunities in rural, rural America. We now talk about deaths of despair, and I'm increasingly learning more and more about public health and how they contribute, how that contributes to community vitality. So as I learn more about that, we maybe can integrate that, but that's sort of something that's been building with me over the last couple of months.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian. Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. And just to anchor ourselves, and I'm glad you brought the health piece up, because health is really, as part of our initiative in Southern Missouri. If you remember from Wichita, the way we've contextualized, what are we trying to do? If you have to answer that in one sentence, the way we've sort of anchored ourselves is to say, we are attempting to help build capital, personal capital for the citizens in our community. Because when we say the word capital, when we talk about more of a balance sheet type of an attitude, it's about building a layer of security and a layer of support that's not transactional. It's something that's a bit more lasting. And again, the four elements of capital, the way we've defined them is, one is obviously financial capital, having some money saved aside in the bank account for us to be able to make good, prudent decisions for ourselves and our family. Second is intellectual capital. How do we grow as individuals? How do we continually train ourselves? Third is social capital. How well are we integrated into our communities? How are we contributing to our communities? And one of the statistics that's really interesting is, we're seeing this big mismatch between jobs and labor in today's economy. And one of the reasons for it is because of sort of disenfranchised population. So you have people and you have jobs, but unless you have the social networks that allow you to get the sort of endorsements, connectivity, the soft introduction, oftentimes people are not able to make that inroad. So that's social capital. And the last is health capital. And obviously that piece that Brian just mentioned, looking at those four elements, we believe then leads to more sustainable community economics. So I've shared my screen, and I know some of you are driving and are on your phone, so you may or may not be able to see it. But basically, what you'll see on the screen is we've created this Google Drive. So it's basically an online repository, an online file with a variety of documents in it. Now, I will tell you, as John already attested to this, it's not pretty right now. It's not, it's not point and touch and click and easy to navigate. It's just, we're just starting this process. And so we're putting the best of our stuff, and even that process is we're just getting started. So we'll refine it in time. But what you will see is there's 15 folders in this Rapid Rural Economic Development Tool Chest. There's 15 different folders. And then there's also the presentation that we conducted in Wichita. So that's here. Our video recording from last conversation, and this recording will also go on there, so you can just click on that and look at the history. And then one other thing I wanted to share was there's this document called Community Feedback. And so this is the quid pro quo. You get the goodies, but this is the one thing we're asking you to do. So it's basically like a spreadsheet, and it's got 5 or 6 columns in it. And what we're asking for is, as you go through this tool, every time you go in and you look at something, just spend 3 minutes clicking onto this document, put in your name, sort of give us which topic you were thinking about, and if there's any specific document that you looked at, tell us about that, and then tell us on a scale from 1 to 10, how helpful was it? And then you can tell us any specific feedback items that you have that can help us improve the quality of that document. And then the last column is, just any other thoughts and ideas that you may have. If you have any thoughts on how we could make that content stronger, if you have examples of tools that you used that you think, here's a link, here's a website, here's a spreadsheet, or here's a document that we use that we like a lot, please do help us find that document. And then over time, hopefully we can make this repository stronger and stronger. So that's just, it also, it'll give us a sense for who's using the content and how much use people are getting out of this. So that'll be very helpful. So that's, the name of the document is Community Feedback. And again, when you click on that link, Rapid Rural Economic Development Tool Chest, it's one of the first documents you'll see. Okay, so I will not go through all 15 folders in detail. I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough of what folders are here. And what I would encourage you to do is each one of you sort of sits in a different place in your organization. So there may be some areas that have higher interest to you than others. So, just kind of go through this at your own pace. And like I said, we've tried to skinny down the content as much as possible so we're not overwhelming you with too much detail. So let me just give you the titles of the 15 folders. First one is internships. So this is all about how do we get our students to access experiential learnings. Second one is a microfund. So if your community is interested in setting up a microfund, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to mute. One second. So I've muted everybody. I'm going to, every 5 to 7 minutes, I'll unmute everyone. And so if you have feedback, we can capture it that way. We're just getting a little bit of feedback. Okay, so the first one was internships. Second one is microfund. So this is about if your community wants to set up a microfund. And the definitions for microfund vary, but in our case, we said one of our communities wanted to set up a fund for small business owners. And they said, if basically in their community, if somebody wanted $3,000 to $5,000, there was nowhere they could go except sort of payday lending. So the community set up a small microfund. And so in that bucket, you will see content on how to set it up. What are the considerations, questions? There's some templates on how to set that up. Third bucket is business support, retention, attraction, and expansion. How do you attract, retain businesses? How do you help local businesses expand? So there's some really good content there we've got a playbook that we've built out for another community, so you can look at that. We've highlighted some data. There's some really great resources, free resources that's available to any community. One of the things where we find is many communities don't know how many businesses there are in their community. They don't know what types of businesses there are in their community. So there's some great tools that you can use to figure out those patterns. So this is, again, low-hanging fruit, starting with maybe the Chamber of Commerce, sitting down with them, or if you're fortunate enough to have an economic developer, working with them to help them understand these tools. And the goal isn't for you to do all of these things. It's just about finding one or two areas where you have leadership and enthusiasm, and then you can have them work on those pieces. Fourth area is succession planning. We know in small rural communities the average age of business owners is increasing, and so we know there will be this transition of ownership of business. So we really have to become much more deliberate in thinking about how will people leave their businesses, what kind of a succession plan is there, financial succession plan, leadership succession plan, knowledge succession plan. As people leave, there's so much information they have in their head. A lot of our small, mid-sized businesses don't have robust processes or documentation. So if someone leaves that has been running the business for 30, 40 years, really got to think about how that transition happens smoothly so that that business isn't jeopardized. Fifth area is business planning. So one of the things we also did in some of our communities is help work directly with small business owners and helping them create a business plan. And rather than trying to be overly complicated about it, we created a very simple template to be able to capture what businesses we're trying to do and how we can help them. So that's that fifth bucket. Sixth bucket is community beautification. You will see, I'm Under buckets 1, internship, 2, microfund, 3, business attraction retention, and this one, 6th, beautification, there's actually a very robust playbook that can give you very, very detailed view at how to do this in your community. And so beautification sounds like a soft thing. We've actually created a little bit of, call it a framework around it, meaning if you're going to improve your community's look and feel, what are the different things we can do, and how do we structure it in a way where the citizens play a role, the students play a role, the city government plays a role, the businesses play a role. So what do the respective roles look like, and how do we all work in a way where we can really significantly improve the way our community looks and feels? So that's the beautification. 7th is program governance, crucial. How do we manage ourselves? How do we manage all the work? So there's lots of templates and details underneath that bucket. That's number 8. Number 9, Business 911 and Business Speaker Series. I know I've shared with you a few times this Business 911 platform that was launched. We also have a Business Speaker Series. Basically, it's a way to educate our businesses on best practices, how they can be tackling things like taxes and marketing, legal issues. Really well received by our communities. 10th is entrepreneurship. How do we think about entrepreneurship in a very practical way? How can we think about entrepreneurship innovation in a way that helps us create a business in 9 months, rather than it's an exercise we're doing and praying that something good happens? Number 11 is asset maps. This one is a larger repository of just a variety of asset maps that we've created. By the way, most of the content, I'd say 80% of the content that you see here relates directly to the GROW program, growth of in the regional Ozarks. But there's about 20-30% of content that we've just thrown in here that's from our other community work as well. So some of the asset maps you'll see gives you a really good sense for how other communities have tried to take a data-driven approach on understanding where their community is, where it's headed, what do the metrics look like. Number 14 is Poverty Alleviation Northwest Project. This is a very, very powerful program. Again, it's sort of our sister program, Growth in the Rural Ozarks, well, that's our program, is sponsored by Community Foundation of the Ozarks. Community Foundation of the Ozarks CFO also sponsors Northwest Project in Springfield, Missouri. Really powerful program, doing great things, very, very metric and data oriented, very outcome oriented. So we've taken some of their content and packaged it to be able to be applied. Springfield obviously is the larger community, so taking the best of their learnings and applying them to smaller rural communities. And then the last bucket is leadership program. So we're just in the process of launching a leadership program. So we have a template there that outlines how we're conceiving of the program. It's still very early. We haven't really launched this yet, but thankfully we have leaders who are helping us design the program, who have done this quite often. And the interesting piece of the leadership program is we're building an intergenerational leadership program with youth, adults, and senior citizens. So the goal would be every 12 weeks, we're running a class of about 6 to 8 people in each one of those buckets. So about 20 to 25 people will go to the class. So roughly 50-ish every year. And then some portion of them get connected into helping serve and sustain the community. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to unmute all of you. Before I dive into any of the details, I kind of want to get a sense from what do you think of those categories so far? And then if you have a thought on which area you'd like me to start, I'd be happy. We've blocked an hour for ourselves. We have 30 minutes remaining. So I'll be happy to dive into any of these 15 areas in more detail that are more helpful to you. You're all now unmuted. Kelly, did you drop off by any chance already? She may have. I know she had to go.
Yeah, she said she only had 25 minutes.
Okay, all right.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Did you purposely skip buckets 12 and 13? Or did I nod off?
No, 12, you're right. I did Yes, I did. I'm sorry. I know I didn't. I wasn't paying attention. Thank you, John. Can't get it. I can't sneak anything by you, John. I was trying.
Us engineers like to dot those I's and cross those T's.
I like it. I do better when I know that I have people paying attention around me. Thank you. So, no, I skipped those. Number 12 is a retail white paper. This was somewhat inspired by the work we were doing in Ozarks. It's sort of a thought leadership piece. Just because we see such a strong pattern of retail struggling in small rural communities, we thought it would be helpful to contextualize the challenge and then highlight some ways in which community leaders could be thinking about retail sustainability. In the age of Amazon, it's very difficult to compete unless you've got a very sort of strategic differentiator from what Amazon offers. So that's that white paper. Number 13 is community engagement. Community engagement, I think we're in the process of developing a playbook on that side. I don't think we have, we just have a rough draft of it right now. But I can't emphasize this. This is a softer area that I think often gets overlooked. In economic development, if we want to really make a program sustainable with community enthusiasm, community interest, by having more leaders step up to the plate and support the work, you want to make sure you're being very proactive and reaching out to the community with the students, parents, business owners, nonprofit leaders, so that they all know what work's going on and they know how to connect into the work to get and gain personal benefit. So it's basically what we try to do is come up with a little bit of a recipe on how communities could be doing effective outreach and community engagement. So that's what those two areas are, John. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. John, any other thoughts on those 15 areas? Which of these are you most interested in? I'll make sure to drill into that particular bucket.
You know, it's hard to say because it's hard to say which slice of the apple do you really want to talk about, and because they all seem to really kind of fit together.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, but you know, I guess in many ways, number 14, the poverty alleviation.
Okay,
that's
a good one. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that, and I'll also the one that I know I wanted to talk about was number 7, program governance. Because if you get the governance piece right, and you know, oftentimes when we start our work, one of the first questions we get asked is, okay, so are you bringing some money? So, you know, where's that checkbook that you brought? And you know, sort of tongue in cheek, I think it's important to have the conversation that good money doesn't bring good governance and good leadership. Good leadership brings good money to a community. And so if there's some place, if you have limited capacity and you have to invest your time and energy in creating good governance and good leadership succession planning in your community. If you do those two things right in the next 24 months, everything else will come into place. It's a natural progression. But if you don't get that right, you can have all the great programs, but nothing will sustain itself because there isn't a robust enough oversight and sort of intellectual curiosity to make these programs succeed. Kyle, thoughts from you, sir?
I was actually going to ask about the poverty alleviation piece, but then also after we wrap up there, interested also on the BRE side.
Yeah.
Again, implementing something on a county-wide scale with many small, economically depressed rural areas. And here, BRE is a new concept, so I'd like to get some more info there.
Okay, great. Brian, any thoughts from you?
No, I just echo what you said, Rishu, is to me, it's laying those foundational things first, and that is the leadership, the governance, that is critical, or the rest of it will fizzle out, and no doubt about it. And as you know, I've taught many times with Grow, those who have the leadership built and addressed and accountable are doing much better than those who don't, even though maybe the others got a quicker start. So it is, you know, instead of going right to the task, I think it's you've got to build that foundation first, and in the long run, that will suit you well.
Great point. Great point. Okay, so let me walk through the sequence that Kyle and John you mentioned. We'll talk about poverty first, then we'll talk about BRNE, and then we'll touch on governance and leadership. And if there's more time, we can look at other areas too. So on the poverty alleviation piece, the name of the program, again, it was conceived in Springfield, Missouri, by the Drew Lewis Foundation, and there's a really dynamic leader. What's Amy's last name? Blansett. Amy Blansett.
Amy Blansett, yeah.
Yeah. So Amy Blansett is just such a dynamic leader. And you know, Brian, you're probably much better suited to talk about than I am. So do you want to speak to it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And we actually, you're giving us too much credit. We stole the idea from Jacksonville, Florida. So, and it really came down to our recognition of our grant making wasn't making the impact on poverty that it needed to, because we were giving lots of our discretionary dollars to poverty programs, and our poverty rate kept growing. So we thought, as a grant maker, we needed to do something different, and we actually looked all across the country and found this program in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was very research based, and that's what appealed to us. So again, it deals with those 9 pivotal assets that they identified as critical to getting and staying out of poverty. And then we went to the community, and here in Springfield, we're, 180,000 people, and we have a lot of good nonprofits. So we went to the nonprofit community and said, you tell us how you're going to address these 9 pivotal assets and who your partners are going to be. And again, we had 4 proposals, selected one, and we're 2.5 years into it, and we're having really, really strong success. So it's evidence-based, it's comprehensive, it's a lot of work, but it's working. It will be different in smaller areas because you don't have all of those nonprofits. So what we're finding in Aurora, where it has implemented, it's a smaller number of people going through it. And in this particular community, it's church-led. And I wouldn't be surprised to see in other smaller communities it'll be church-led, because there are not the other nonprofits with the capacity there. The kind of the 3 keys we've learned with it is how critical it is for case management. So each of these families meet with a caseworker every week, and they also meet as a group, as a cohort, and that's very beneficial, so they can talk to each other, build that social capital, and that's been critical. The second thing, each family has what's called an advocate, and the advocate is a volunteer that walks with that family through this journey, and so they'll be with them for a couple of years, and they're the ones that, when they're talking to the utility company or getting a Social Security card or whatever is critical. And then the third is, so many of our families are in the debt trap. They are with predatory lenders, and there's no way out. So we had to come up with a solution to that, and we partnered with a credit union, and we have bankers actually are volunteering and doing the budget work with all these families, and they have paid down, just in our cohorts, over almost right at $400,000 worth of personal debt by refinancing at a lower rate at the credit union and putting it on payment. So those are probably our 3 biggest learnings from that, are those I just mentioned.
So yeah, thank you for that feedback, Brian. That's tremendous. So as we basically the document you're seeing in front of you outlines the various variables, factors that it consider. And Brian mentioned there's these variables, social capital, health capital, things like childcare, legal issues. So the program is very comprehensive, very data rich. So the documents will help you understand some of those pieces. There's a document here that outlines how financially the program was structured to help support the program. So anyways, here's how I would think about these assets. We want to make sure that you have enough to get to answer, say, 60% of your questions. There's no document that will answer 100% of your questions because, some of your questions we may not have contextualized the question itself. So our hope is take a look at the document, those areas that you're intrigued by. What we can do is connect you with the people that are actually doing the work, and then they can help you, they can get you the answers that you need. So again, if you have access to your screens, you'll see I just pulled up a couple of documents that help you just broadly contextualize the program. And just to sort of, the Northwest Project was the program based in Springfield, Missouri. When we synthesized it down, now it's called Project Rise, which is just a smaller rural-based program. And in each of our communities, our goal is to adopt 10 families and to structurally move these 10 families out of poverty in 24 months. That's what we're striving to do. We know that's a really sort of tough thing to do. We know we're going to get some wins there, and we know that some of our families won't be ready to make that transition. So we're fully prepared and not being unrealistic in our expectations, but at the same time, what I commend the group with is they're not setting low benchmarks for themselves. They're being aggressive in the goals that they're trying to pursue. So John and Kyle, is that helpful on those two areas, on the poverty alleviation?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. Let me hop over to number 3, business retention, attraction, and expansion. So couple of thoughts on this front. We have a really good playbook here. So if you look at this playbook that's been created, you can get a pretty good sense for what are some of the concepts that we're talking about. It talks everything from who should be on the team to do the outreach, what types of businesses should you be targeting, what does engagement look like, and so there's a playbook that's very helpful. And and if one of these evenings, John, if you're not able to sleep, print it out and put it by your bedside. I guarantee you it's going to put you to sleep right away. All right.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. You don't have to spend money on medication. You just use our documentation. So anyways, but we've set it up in a sort of an easy to follow flow chart that says, okay, assessing the needs, really starting to even, one basic concept in our BRNE strategy is you never just walk into a business and say, so I'm sorry, let me just start by defining what BRNE is. Business retention and expansion entails that some dedicated individual in a community is going and visiting on businesses, having engaging conversations, identifying possibilities in which that business can grow, and then putting those businesses on the growth path. So this is pretty standard economic development strategy. The issue we see is too often you have an individual walking into a business without any context for what that business does, without any specific solutions that they can offer the business. So the number one thing we recommend is before you make your visit, we have specific directions on how you can think about understanding what the business does, basic research that you have to do. Second is go in with some sort of a hypothesis. So if you're walking into a business, I don't know, that's a taxi company, right? Not that may be a thing in rural communities, but or let's say a small retail restaurant or a corner shop. As you walk into that store, go in with the hypothesis, which is, hey, in the age of Amazon, I imagine that you're probably losing some business. How's that hurting? And by the way, go with an answer also, which is, in every community, one very basic answer we should always have is, would you mind hiring an intern? And you can have an intern for free for 6 months to help you with your social media postings. So it's that kind of simplicity of an answer, understanding what the business does, where their challenge may be, and then coming up with some answer that can help address their challenge. So that's a really strong concept that you will see identified in this playbook. The other thing I also want to highlight is, and I think I was mentioning this earlier as our conversation was starting, which is business listings. I'm just really surprised at how rare it is to find communities that have a good sense of what businesses are in their community. And so what I've done here is attached a template of businesses in Aurora, Missouri. So again, it's a small community, about 6,000 or so people. And we were able to pull this data for them, give it to the chamber. And now the chamber is able to use this data to figure out, okay, who's our members, who's not our members. As we're thinking about existing set of businesses that may want to sell their services to other local businesses, we finally have one comprehensive database. And this particular database that we use, one of the powerful elements of it is it also tells you an approximation of how many people work in these locations and this is sensitive, so you have to be very careful. It also gives you an estimate of the annual revenues for the business. Now, this number comes from a national database. It's not very accurate, but directionally helpful. So you have to be sensitive just because obviously it's financials you're talking about. But again, I wanted to highlight those two specific assets. One is understanding what local businesses you have, because then, I'll give you an example. In one of our communities, we only had the chamber lead wanted to go visit on businesses. They were only going to spend about 2 to 3 hours a week actually knocking on doors. So if you know that you have time to do that, which businesses should you be visiting? How do you figure out which business to prioritize and which ones you can hold off till, maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? And that's where having this database is so helpful, because the data here, you can slice and dice it based on industry codes. You can look at the sales. You can even see which businesses, what the credit score of some of these businesses looks like. So you can sort of look at those variables and say, okay, here's a set of businesses that may be feeling some pain. So let's go visit them right away. Or here's a business that looks like they're just blowing up. So maybe we should go visit that business. But again, it allows you to be much more scientific in figuring out which businesses to prioritize. Any questions there, Kyle or John?
Oddly, that was exactly the step that I was in following our own strategic plan that aligned directly with what you got here. Although this is much more comprehensive, yeah, I think, than the listing we were looking at preparing, yeah, but at least a good place to begin.
Good, yeah. Great place to start. So we use a tool, it's called, I just blanked out the name of the database. I think it's Stats USA. Reference USA, that's what it is, Reference USA. We find that to be a really powerful tool, so you can try that one out. Okay, let's talk about governance for a few minutes. We have about 8 minutes left. On program governance, there's a variety of documents in here, and you can sort of poke and prod at them at your convenience. The bottom document you see there is called stakeholder mapping. So this is a document that a great simple place to start. So, any community that wants to revitalize itself and is ready to sort of do something very focused and strategic, the place to start is get those movers and shakers in the room, bring up a document like this, and start to map out who are the core leaders in your community. And so it's just a very simple template that says, okay, name of the person, which organizations are they affiliated with, which other organizations are they on? Maybe they sit on a board of a Rotary, a chamber. You kind of map out what are they interested in, what gets them moving, like what are the last 4 or 5 projects that they've done locally, what are their pet peeves. Just make that list. And do this exercise with 3 or 4 people in closed rooms so no one has to see what you come up with. But putting all that information is a great place to start, because all of a sudden you'll start to see patterns emerge. You'll see 3 or 4 people that really care about the sort of physicality of the community. Maybe they've been involved in the local land bank or community cleanup. A handful of people that are always very entrepreneurial. Some folks that are interested in working at the city and kind of improving the city governance process. Economic development, good economic development comes down to one very fundamental thing, which is finding people that are passionate about a topic and just letting them do what they like to do and get out of their way. That's it. If you can do that again and again with your community leaders, you're on a great path. And too often the mistake we make is we come up with the great ideas first, and then we try to align them to local people who sometimes just aren't enthusiastic about the idea. So that's why I kind of wanted to start here by saying, use this template like this to just figure out who your people are. There's also some leadership charter examples that we have. So as you get people together, how do you get them to commit? So there's some examples there. I think I mentioned this last time. Whenever you're starting a program like that, it's just really crucial to pick some low-hanging fruit, something easy to get after and to get a win, just to show folks that you mean business and you're going to be doing something. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. I've also provided you for Aurora a template of their sort of initiative plans. Do you remember me talking a little bit about a kill switch template last time? Which is all around, we measure every quarter how programs are doing. Rather than waiting to see how a program did, we proactively say, here's the 3 things you must deliver. And if you don't, we're going to have a conversation about, do we keep doing this or not? So I've given you an example of what that template looks like. You can use that to get your leadership on board. The other thing I'd like to share with you really briefly is, I'm going to switch. Please, you can look at this document in a bit more detail. I want to share with you this number 11 asset maps. I find this to be quite helpful as you're thinking about leadership and organizations. Look at these 2 or 3 different tools that you can use to understand from a data perspective what's happening locally. For Northeast, this is a great example of it's much fancier. You don't need to do anything like this. We built this out for a community in Northeast Ohio. It just sort of lists out all the stuff that they have in the community, which just sort of interesting to be able to quickly see what's going on, what's not going on. This data we also have in our Business 911 platform, so you can see it there. This community dashboard, is this the one? Yeah, so right here, something else I wanted to show you is, this is really interesting way to tell, one second. If you want to show data to a community in one central place, and we've got a link for this. So again, let's just pick an Aurora. So you can go here, and we built these templates out for each community where you can see, okay, so in each community we do a survey to see what do people think about the community. We can look at population trends. Are we increasing? Are we decreasing? What does the age of our community look like? Now, the reality is very few people get super energized about data, but still having the core elements of data in one place so that we don't have to be talking past each other. We can all be focused on similar issues. We also put in here things like how much the schools are spending on education, some education metrics. So what we find is oftentimes our leaders aren't aware of the most basic economic realities. And platforms like this can help you bring people together, help them understand what's working, what's not, and create a plan on how they can move forward, and then sort of help them stay more coordinated as they proceed forward. So let me pause there and just see if you guys have any other thoughts or questions. How are we doing?
Lots of information. Going to take me a while to get through it, but it's all fantastic stuff. I'm a one-man shop with a volunteer board, so I'm going to need allies to help make any of this reality.
Good. Well, you know what? I totally get it. This is how every one of our communities looks. I would say pick just 2 areas. There's 15 items listed here. Pick 2 things that you're going to look at in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks until we speak again in January, and just sort of slowly work through it. Some of it will be very obvious and it won't be interesting, so just skip right past it. But hopefully there'll be a couple of templates that do make sense. Take them, use them, and like I said, there's that document called community feedback. So I'm hoping, at a minimum, between Kyle and John, I get 2 entries on that spreadsheet that say, here's what we looked at, here's what was interesting, and by the way, you may want to take a look at these other things. John, thoughts, sir?
We'll do our best to do that. We do have, I think it was Kyle said he's a one-man show. We are a half-person show. We have a part-time executive director with a volunteer board, and the Tuesday after Thanksgiving is our matched Giving Tuesday, so that's a big deal for us.
Okay.
And we are also undergoing a transition in that executive director. So we'll do our best to spend some time and look at what you have here, but it just happens that, timing is everything.
Yeah, no, I get it, absolutely. Brian, anything else you want to add?
No, I think you covered it very thoroughly, and sorry for my tech issues up front, but we did get our power back on. So
Good. I'm glad. Okay, so let me just ask you this last question before we leave. What do you think in January, as we look at potential dates? Even if you're making sure we can pick a time that works for you. What do you think of maybe the 7th, Monday the 7th of January, around the same time? Do you think that would work for you guys?
Works for me, yeah.
Okay.
Let me look at a calendar here.
Yeah.
And nobody's got the 7th except you, so we'll do it.
All right, perfect. So I'll send an invite out, and as you know, we've recorded this conversation, so I'll send you a recording of this as well.
Great.
And I'm not going to talk to you before the New Year, so happy Thanksgiving, eat lots of turkey, happy Christmas, happy New Year, and we'll see you in about 5-6 weeks.
Same to you.
Great.
Thanks for,
You as well, Ritu. Thanks so much, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody else.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey, take care. Bye.
Bye.